Plus 20, Is This Our Nuclear Renaissance? By Jason Ferry, Greg Anderson, and Emery Groregan.
We chose our project of license extension for several reasons. Initially, it was chosen because it appears that it's one of the most financially viable means of generating additional nuclear power from the current resources. Secondly, a nuclear renaissance began in about 2007, and it appeared as though we were going to have 30 new power plants based on the applications the NRC received. But since the change in the economy and natural resources, the majority of those have been either canceled or withdrawn. And lastly, this is a topic in which all the members of Team D had some interest. Initial license for power reactor operations. The Atomic Energy Act, AEA, of 1954 was created for the peaceful use of atomic energy to the maximum extent possible. The Atomic Energy Act created the regulatory body of the Atomic Energy Commission, the AEC, which would later become the NRC, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The Atomic Energy Act was modeled after the Communications Act of 1934, which permitted radio stations to operate for a period of 7 years, provided that they conform to the regulations of the Communications Act. They would be permitted to receive an extension to continue additional broadcasting for up to 5 years. U.S. Congress and the Atomic Energy Commission chose an initial license term of 40 years. This was chosen because that is a typical depreciation period for an electric power station. Initial license basis. During the initial period, regulatory guidance is provided for compliance during this period of time to ensure the licensing basis is complied with. The license bases are a living document, consistently changing, and it's required that the licensee meet these commitments throughout their license period. Additionally, as technology advances, it's expected that there will be future changes made to the license basis as well. They will be administered by the governing body of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. History of the application process.
In 1982, the NRC established a program for nuclear plant aging research. That was a program to deal with the aging effects of nuclear power plants, their systems, components, and structures. And they concluded that most issues are manageable and don't create any additional risk that would prevent an extension of operation.
By 1991, the NRC established 10 CFR 54, which was requirements for renewal of operating license for the power plants. In 1995, again, the license renewal rules were revised based on some findings they had several years earlier, further streamlined the process and made it a little more efficient. In addition to the technical aspects of the aging components, 10 CFR 54 has to also follow up with the environmental impact issues of license extension according to the National Environmental Policy Act. In 1996, 10 CFR 51 was revised to make this process more efficient. 10 CFR 51's environmental protection regulations for domestic licensing. Regulatory Guide 1.188 was issued in July of 2001, and that provided a more standardized format for submission of the renewal application. That was entitled Standard Format and Content for Applications to Renew Nuclear Plant Operating License. In addition, Reg Guide 1.188 provides industry guidelines for implementing the requirements of 10 CFR 54, or better known as the License Renewal Rule, that was established by the Nuclear Energy Institute and their document 9510. Pre-process for license renewal. Prior to a licensee even submitting an application, they should have performed assessments addressing the management of the aging plant materials and indicating that the plant can be operated safely during the period of extension request.
Reactor license renewal process. Application submission by licensee.
Technical reviews, concurrent with the environmental reviews.
And finally, the last portion of the process is the inspection program. Application submission by licensee. As I described earlier, it actually starts with the licensee's evaluation of plant materials, systems, structures, and components, and their effect due to age. An interesting bit about the application submission time: if it is submitted at least 5 years prior to the end of the license, and it is caught in the process where the review is not completed by the end date of the initial license, according to the timely renewal doctrine, the licensee can continue operation until that application is either approved or denied. From this point, the application runs a parallel path. One, the technical review for safety related, and secondly, the environmental review. Technical and environmental reviews, the two parallel paths. Technical reviews, concurrent with the environmental reviews. Technical review is regulated by 10 CFR 54. The environmental review, second portion, is regulated by 10 CFR 51. Technical reviews, 10 CFR 54. 3 documents have been created to assist the NRC with their related technical reviews. New Reg 1801, New Reg 1800, and Reg Guide 1.188. New Reg 1801 addresses some plant-specific issues related to plant aging, but primarily it is the generic aging lessons learned regulation. New Reg 1800 is a standard review plan for license renewal. And finally, Reg Guide 1.188 is the industry guideline for implementing requirements of 10 CFR 54. I mentioned earlier the license renewal rule, which came from Nuclear Energy Institute. 2 safety principles must remain intact for the technical reviews of 10 CFR 54. First is the current process must be adequate to ensure the licensing basis of all plants provide and maintain an acceptable level of safety. And secondly, each plant's licensing basis must be maintained during the renewal term in the same manner and extent as during the original term. For the environmental reviews, which fall under 10 CFR 51, there's similar guidance as there is with the safety reviews. New Reg 1437, New Reg 1437 assists the generic environmental impact statements. And then we have a couple additional documents, which are New Reg 1555 and Reg Guide 4.2. They both help with format and content for the license submission. Each plant applying for an extension is required a specific environmental impact report. And those reviews are performed in accordance with the National Environmental Policy Act and 10 CFR 51. Part of the environmental review process is public meetings in the vicinity of the nuclear plant. Following those meetings, the NRC will make recommendations as whether or not the issues are sufficient to uphold the request, following which a preliminary supplement to the generic environmental impact statement will come about. Another public meeting is scheduled following the release of the impact study. After the NRC recommendations be open for public comment and consideration, the NRC will issue their final supplement to the generic environmental impact statement. Inspections. Inspections are a vital part of any license basis and continued nuclear plant operation. Following an extension approval, and once entered into the extension period, additional inspections are performed. Just as the meetings are public, the inspection results are also made public.
The duration of the license process are dependent on any number of variables, but typically the NRC estimates that the process will take between 22 and 30 months, and they've been very good about that. And finally, it appears that the additional 20 years of a license renewal appear to be most financially viable additional nuclear generation for the utilities. In the near future, we'd like to see more new construction. And I thank you very much for your attention.